Okay, so let's just jump right in with getting started. This will be just a big long rant about how to get started in knife making. This is one of the most common questions I get for sure is, I just watched an episode of Forged in Fire and I want to know how to make knives. How do I get started making knives? First thing I would do, and this is what I did, and I'm really glad this is how I got into it, is I went to where I learned how to do everything from making a knife to fixing my truck. I jumped on YouTube and searched for how to make a knife. You're going to run into endless information on there of all kinds of different ways to make knives, which is great. Watch lots of videos. Now, the biggest thing is don't get overwhelmed or discouraged at all by guys' setups, all the tools they've got. Here's my giant KMG grinder. Here's my, even heat kiln. Here's my forge. All these real expensive elaborate setups. You don't need all that. In fact, when you first go onto YouTube, a lot of the videos you're going to see are going to be how to make a knife with basic hand tools. There's lots of that on there, and it's doable. You can get away with a bench vise and a file and make a knife that way, and there's lots of videos of guys doing it. I wouldn't recommend doing it that way. That's going to be a lot of work that you can you're not going to learn a lot by hours and hours of filing, but you can do it if you want to get away with it real cheap. But that would be the first thing I would do, is jump on YouTube and have a look around. Also, there's lots of great resources like forums, online knife making forums. Sign up for one of those and don't post anything. Don't go on there and immediately start asking all these questions. Go on to forums and start reading. There's, again, endless information on there. A lot of them will keep an archive of the best posts with all the best information. Down usually at the bottom somewhere they'll have archives, and it'll just basically, for the exact same reason that I'm doing this kind of thing, a lot of the questions that beginning knife makers and even like advanced knife makers are asking are all being answered on these forums, dozens of times over. So check out forums and start reading. For sure later on, once you've read through a bunch of stuff, if you run into some issues or you can't find an answer on Google's got lots of answers too. Then absolutely start asking questions. I don't mind you guys asking me questions and stuff too, because there are little specific things out there that, little hurdles you might run into. But do the legwork, do some reading, and do some research. Also, one big question you want to ask yourself is, why do I want to get into knife making? Is it just going to be a hobby, or are you looking to make some money at it? Those are really going to dictate kind of your initial setup, like if you're going to be into investing money or how much time you want to get into it with it. If you really want to jump in and you're hoping to maybe make a couple of bucks, then maybe you want to sign up for a class. There's lots of guys maybe in your area that will do knife making classes, or forging classes if you want to do that stuff too. If you're just looking at kind of doing it as a hobby, maybe you're not going to commit that kind of financial commitment or time commitment to it. So that's a big one, is really kind of figure out exactly what you're doing it for. Once you get that kind of figured out, and you've done lots of research and you've figured it out, sort of the basic process of how to make a knife, then just make a knife. There's really, do all the reading for sure, but there's no substitute for experience. Just make one. You're gonna make a lot of mistakes, and you'll make a lot of them in that first knife for sure. So make the knife, make the mistakes, and try not to get too discouraged by them, because you're going to make a lot of mistakes. I made a ton of mistakes. I still make a lot of mistakes making these knives. I'm for sure, I'm no expert in this, but I definitely made a lot of mistakes along the way, and that's the best way to learn. Doing a lot of reading and watching a lot of videos can hopefully help steer you away from some of these mistakes, but there's no way you're going to make it in making knives without making some mistakes. So try to learn how to embrace them. It's frustrating and it can be costly a lot of the time, but try to it's really not easy, but try to take from it what you can. Try to, you know, embrace that it's a learning experience. Try not to break anything expensive, but yeah, it's gonna suck to make some mistakes, but make the knife and make some mistakes and then make another knife and hopefully don't make the same mistakes and keep making knives. Try not to use a lot of expensive material. Making your first few knives are gonna suck. It's just the way it goes. So, you know, make them out of some junk if you have it around, or if you have access to some, you know, maybe it's not great steel, but who cares? You're just practicing. You'll learn a lot about your shapes, and you know, your handles and your grips and your weights and balance and all that kind of stuff. You don't have to necessarily be making a really high quality functional knife out of a high quality expensive steel in order to learn those things. Grinding bevels is something I still struggle with all the time, and you know, that only comes from experience. You can't learn how to grind a bevel I guess in a video you can kind of get some tips and they can teach you how to build a jig, I guess, but I would learn by hand. But you know, make a lot of knives and make a lot of mistakes. That being said, draw a lot of knives, because you can all of my shapes have at least 5, 6, 12 different other designs similar to them on paper, because drawing on paper is way easier and cheaper and faster than building the knife itself. So I'll sketch a knife on paper and I'll look at it for a while and I won't really be that happy with it, and I'll tweak it a little bit and I still won't be happy with it, and then I'll come back to it like after dinner or something and I'll make a couple more changes to it, and you know, on and on until I finally have one that I'm pretty happy with. I'll cut it out, I'll make the knife, and then I'll usually go back and make even more changes and tweaks and stuff, and that's totally fine. That's a great process to you know, finalizing the shapes of your knives. But yeah, I would just draw lots. You know, get some paper and a pencil and a big eraser and sketch lots and lots of knives. Look on Google at all kinds of different pictures of knives. For sure, don't obviously plagiarize and steal someone else's design, but you know, take parts of, you know, get inspired by other people's shapes, and you know, I like this guy's handle and I like that blade shape, and you know, put them together, or try to draw exactly someone else's blade, and you know, maybe try to reverse engineer how they got to where that final shape came from, you know, that kind of thing. Just do lots of drawings, lots of sketches, and maybe you'll end up with a couple of really good ones, hopefully, that's kind of unique. And that's how I would get into knife making. And then, you know, for actually building the knife and the tooling and stuff, I'm going to do a whole other video, at least one other video, on, you know, tools and all the tools that you really need and a lot of the tools that you don't really need, and that's going to be a whole other video. But in order to just get started, you know, if you don't have a bunch of tools yourself, you know, ask around. Maybe you got friends that have got tools that you can borrow for a day or whatever. You don't need a whole lot. Again, I'll get into the whole what you need to get started, but yeah, the biggest thing is don't get discouraged by all these huge setups and all the big elaborate things that you're going to see. You don't need all that stuff. You need an angle grinder and a bench vise and some sandpaper, you know, and you know, a fire that's hot enough, a campfire if you need to, you know, that sort of thing. Even if you're not using great steel, then you don't even need to heat treat the thing if you're just making, you know, practice knives. So that's the biggest thing, is do the legwork, do some research first. Try to answer a lot of the questions yourself instead of asking them and sitting around waiting for someone to reply, because they've probably answered that question a lot of times beforehand, and you're not going to get as good an answer from someone who's tired of answering the same question so many times. So you know, jump on some forums and do a lot of reading. Maybe if you are real serious, there's lots of books coming out. There's one that's actually, it's coming out in August, that's going to be specifically for beginner knife makers, that Laura Zira she wrote. And the cool thing about that one is somewhere probably way in the back, I'm actually featured in it. I got a page, which is impossible to mention without sounding real arrogant, but I'm super proud of that. So You have to get over it. So there's lots of books out there that you can get into if you're into the whole tactile reading an actual book thing, which is kind of neat. But the internet is your best friend for this kind of thing. Do lots of research and watch lots of videos, and kind of just do it. Just get into it. Build a knife however you can, with whatever means, the cheapest way that you can do it at first, because you might just hate it, and have fun with it. Don't take it too seriously. It's just making knives. It's just a tool that someone might lose in the bush somewhere. So don't take it too seriously. Try to have some fun with it, and make a lot of mistakes, because that's how we learn. So thanks for watching the video. Hopefully I didn't ramble too long. We're over 10 minutes already. And like I say, I'll elaborate on a lot of these things in some future videos. Cheers.